Hey everybody, welcome back. Still on Unit 3 here. We're doing National Income and Price Determination. That's the name of Unit 3. In this video, I'm going to be talking about multipliers. This is 3.2 in the course guide. And the thing I really want to focus on right off the beginning is it says multipliers with an S, okay, plural. So there must be more than one multiplier, and there is. There is a spending multiplier, and then there is a tax/transfer payment multiplier, okay? So there are two multipliers. A spending multiplier and a tax and transfer payment multiplier. What I want you to know though is when I teach you the spending multiplier, the first one, and that's what this video is going to be focused on, is the spending multiplier, you really don't need the tax or the transfer payment multiplier. I'm going to explain that in the next video, okay? So the reason it has an S is that there's two multipliers. This video is focused on the spending multiplier. A big thing that I also want to point out is I call it oftentimes the simple spending multiplier. The reason this is called the simple spending multiplier in some textbooks is that when we do this multiplier, when you see me explain it today, we're going to ignore all leakages from the main circle in the circular flow, and my finger is going around the way that money goes around right now, okay, in my diagram up here. And there's no leakages from the circle besides one, which is called savings. It's the only one we're concerned with. So that's why we have the simple spending multiplier. But the rest of the video, I'm mainly just going to call it the spending multiplier. So, what is the spending multiplier? What it is a device that tells us whenever we get a change in spending, and that's key, a change in spending, we're going to get an actually amplified impact on the economy. So if we change spending by a certain amount, that impact of the initial change in spending is going to get amplified because we have a circular flow. That's why I'm doing this with my finger. So I'm trying to say, hey, as money goes around again and again and again, that initial change in spending is going to get amplified into a much bigger change in spending. Okay? Hopefully that makes some sense. The way that I'm going to focus on the spending multiplier in this video is going to be a change in government purchases. So this arrow is money going from the government into the product market, so it's government purchases. But I just want you to know that everything I talk about is related to all four types of spending. What are the four types of spending? Well, household spending is consumption, okay? Business spending is investment. Government spending is government purchases, and when the rest of the world spends money on our products, that's exports, and when we spend money on their products, that's imports, okay? Which we'll often see this as kind of like an XN for net exports. All right, let's get going a little bit into this. Let's just say that we have some amount of spending happening, and then the government passes a stimulus bill and says, you know what, we're going to increase, all right, the amount of government purchases by some amount. And for this video, I'm just going to say $100 billion, okay? So $100 billion. I want to make sure we're clear. That is our initial change in spending initiated by the government. So they passed legislation that says we're going to increase spending by $100 billion. Well, that $100 billion is going to flow into the product market, and it is going to change nominal GDP initially by $100 billion. However, you can see I just drew that arrow. That money is going to start heading around, okay? This arrow right here is businesses getting this money as revenue. Well, what are they going to do with their revenue? They're going to pay all of their costs, and any money left over is profit, and both costs and profits flow to the resource market. And then that money flows to households as income. Now, that income is going to go one of two places, okay? Right here, I'm stopping. That's my fork in the road, okay? It's either going to go to the financial market as savings, or it is going to go to the product market as consumption. What is determining how much of that $100 billion goes to the financial market as savings is the MPS, and the amount of this $100 billion that goes to the product market is the MPC. Now, of course, if I add up both the MPS and the MPC, I get 1, okay? Why is that? Well, imagine that if the MPS was 0.2, meaning that for any additional change in disposable income, 20% of it, 0.2, is going to go to the financial market. Well, that means that 80% or 0.8 will go to the product market as spending. All right? So the 100 billion goes around, 20 billion would go this way, 80 billion would go to the product market as spending. So we would have 80 billion going right here. And then that 80 billion, of course, would increase nominal GDP by 80 billion. And you're starting to see the multiplication or amplification process happening now. Okay? Our initial change of spending was 100 billion. Because we have a circular flow, our change on our economy, nominal GDP, is going to be bigger than that. And that 80 billion is not going to sit there. It's going to be picked up by businesses, paid for cost and profit, flow as income to household. 20% of the 80 is going to go this way, and 80% of the 80 is going to go to spending, so 64 billion. So it goes up by another 64 billion. This process is going to continue. That 64 is going to go around with some amount going that way and some amount going that way. It is going to continue. We're going to have several rounds. Okay, put dot, dot, dot. I want you to think that's a lot of rounds in there. This is going to keep going until it gets to 0, all right? So, in other words, we're going to have a much bigger impact on our economy than just our initial change in spending. So, let's get to the actual spending multiplier. Well, you see that we've already written an MPS of 0.2 and an MPC of 0.8, all right? The spending multiplier, the formula for the spending multiplier is 1 over 1 minus the MPC, which I'm not really fond of. Or you could rewrite that. Remember, MPS and MPC added together equals 1, so you can rewrite this as 1 over the MPS. That's the one that I like, okay? That's the one that my mind holds on to. That is the spending multiplier. So we put this down, 1 over the MPS, which we know is 1 over 0.2. Well, let's go ahead and simplify this, okay? So 1 over 0.2. 0.2 goes into 1 5 times, so that actually means that the simple spending multiplier is 5. And what I like to tell students is, hey, that's actually a ratio, okay? So when you see it as 5, it's best to write it as 5 over 1. Now that's still 5, but write it as 5 over 1 because it's a ratio. What is that spending multiplier showing us or telling us? It's saying for every $1 initial change in spending, we will get a total change in spending or total change in nominal GDP, because those are synonymous. Total change in spending equals our total change in nominal GDP of $5. So we can now solve the problem, all right? What was the problem? We had an initial change of $100 billion in spending by the government. They increased government purchases by $100 billion. That's our initial change in spending. We want to know what's going to be the impact on the economy as a whole once we have this whole multiplication process take place. Well, we're going to make this into a proportion. We're going to say, okay, we know this is the spending multiplier. We know our initial change in spending was 100 billion, so all we have to do is find what this is going to be, and if we solve this right here, act like that's an X right there, if we solve this, we will get 500 billion. So, an initial change in spending by the government of 100 billion with an MPS of 0.2 and an MPC of 0.8 is going to impact our economy or our nominal GDP by 500 billion. That is a multiplier effect, okay? An initial change in spending gets amplified or multiplied into a bigger impact on our economy. Anyhow, hope that made sense to you. We'll see you in the next video.